I didn't speak when he humiliated me. I didn't speak when he blamed me for things I never did. I didn't even speak when everyone, family, neighbors, even strangers, chose his lies over my truth. But there is something people like him always forget. A silent woman is not a defeated woman. She is a woman gathering evidence. She is a woman waiting. And when she finally points her finger, she destroys the entire room. The night I exposed him, the world stopped. And for the first time, he was the one who couldn't speak. I still remember that December night in Birmingham, cold enough to freeze breath, quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat, and cruel enough to change everything I believed about love. My husband, Daniel, walked into our flat with that same expression he always carried when he was about to break something inside me. Cold, sharp, calculated. "You made me look stupid today," he said, throwing his keys on the table. I had simply asked him, gently, why he didn't come to pick our daughter from school like he promised. That was all. One question. But with men like Daniel, a question is an accusation, and an accusation is an attack, and an attack must be punished. He yelled, he paced, he pointed fingers so close to my face that I felt his breath on my skin. I stood still. I didn't respond. Silence was the only armor I had left. But in his eyes, silence was guilt. When he slammed the bedroom door and left me with my daughter crying in my arms, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, "This is not love. This is survival." If cruelty hurts, disbelief destroys. When Daniel began twisting stories about me, saying I was unstable, dramatic, emotional, impossible to live with, I expected people who knew me to defend me. But no one did. His mother said, "She always looked too emotional. Maybe she overreacts." His sister said, "He's a good man. If he's saying something, he must be right." Our neighbors, who heard him shouting every other night, shrugged and said, "People fight. It's normal." Even my own children, they didn't turn against me, but they stepped away from me, quiet, hesitant, confused. I didn't blame them. When a man lies boldly enough, the world believes him before they even look at the woman he's hurting. I stayed silent through all of it, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew speaking would make everything worse. But silence has a strange power. It shows you exactly who stands with you and who stands watching. That was the day I learned I had no one. Absolutely no one. I think the universe sends warnings. Soft ones first, loud ones later. My warning came the day I found a message on Daniel's phone. Not romantic, not sexual, but far more dangerous. It was a message proving he was planning something against me. A lie so big, so perfect, so rehearsed that if he succeeded, I would lose everything. My home, my children, my reputation, my life. And that was the day my silence changed. It was no longer the silence of fear. It became the silence of planning, the silence of watching, learning, collecting, preparing. If he wanted a war, I would give him one, but not with shouting, not with tears, not with drama. I would defeat him with the one thing he never believed I had, proof. Most people passed me in the streets like I was invisible, but one person didn't. He was a quiet man who ran the coffee stall near the bus stop in Harborne. Tall, calm, always observing. We had never really spoken before, just exchanged polite smiles. But one winter morning, as I stood there with swollen eyes and trembling hands, he finally said, "You're not okay, are you?" Just 5 words. 5 words no one in my own home ever asked me. For the first time in months, my throat tightened not from fear, but from the shock of being seen. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't even tell him half, but he noticed things. The bruises I hid, the shaking in my voice, the way I flinched when someone raised their tone nearby. He didn't push, didn't judge, didn't assume. He simply said, "If you ever need help collecting yourself, I'm here every morning." It wasn't love, it wasn't romance, it was recognition, the kind survivors instantly feel for one another. And suddenly, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't completely alone. When I say I collected evidence, I don't mean I took pictures or saved texts. I went further. I tracked names, dates, patterns, his lies, his threats, the nights he came home drunk, the messages he deleted but not fast enough. I documented everything, every insult, every time he called me crazy, every time he twisted stories to make me look hysterical. I wrote it all down. I kept it safe. And when he left his laptop open one night, I found something even more powerful, a plan he drafted with someone I never imagined was involved, a woman, someone from his workplace. They were building a case against me, painting me as unstable, unfit, dangerous. If they succeeded, I would lose my kids. My hands shook as I read every line. My vision blurred, but my silence stayed firm. This wasn't the moment to scream. This was the moment to sharpen my knife quietly. Because the one thing Daniel never expected was that I had stopped being afraid. Children are more observant than adults think. One night, my daughter knocked on my bedroom door. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She looked disappointed. "Why didn't you defend yourself, Mom?" she asked. "He says things about you that don't sound true, but you never say anything back." Her voice wasn't angry. It was confused. And that hurt more than anything Daniel had ever done to me. I sat beside her and whispered, "Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to shout. It needs to wait." She didn't fully understand, but something changed. The way she watched him, the way she listened to me, the way she began noticing the cracks in the stories he told others. And slowly, quietly, my children began drifting toward me again. Not because I forced them, not because I argued, but because children eventually recognize who the liar is and who the wounded one is. Because the one thing Daniel never expected was that I had stopped being afraid. It happened unexpectedly. A community meeting at school. Small room, warm lights, parents chatting about grades and behavior. Nothing dramatic. Daniel arrived late, dressed like the charming husband he pretended to be. He smiled at everyone, shook hands, acted like the perfect father. And then he did it. He made a joke about me, subtle, sharp, humiliating. People laughed. He waited for me to shrink. He waited for me to stay quiet. But something snapped inside me. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply pointed at him and said, "Ask him where he was last Friday." Silence. Everyone turned to look at him. His face drained of color. He stuttered. He looked at me the way criminals look at CCTV cameras. Because he knew what I had. Proof, dates, times, messages, names, receipts. He knew in that moment I could burn his entire life with one sentence. And for the first time since the day I married him, he was the one who stayed silent. After that night at the school meeting, things changed faster than I expected. Daniel tried to act normal, overly normal, making breakfast, talking sweetly, pretending nothing had happened. But his hands trembled when he held his coffee mug. His eyes darted toward me like I carried a loaded gun. Because in a way, I did. I never raised my voice. I didn't threaten him. I didn't confront him again. I just existed with the truth. And that was enough to make him unravel. He became paranoid, checking his phone constantly, deleting messages twice, asking the kids strange questions about me, accusing me of planning something, when he was the only one whose lives were stacked so high they were beginning to suffocate him. The more silent I became, the louder his guilt grew. He couldn't stand it. Not the fear, not the uncertainty, not the fact that I finally held the power he once stole from me. It was a rainy Thursday morning when I saw him again, the quiet man from the coffee stall. He noticed the change in me immediately. "You look stronger," he said softly, handing me my cup. "I had to be," I replied. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. Some people recognize survivors the way sailors read storms, quietly, accurately, respectfully. But that morning, as people hurry past us, he said something that stuck with me. "You're not fighting him anymore, but he's fighting the version of you he created. That's why he's losing." It was the first time anyone put words to what I already felt. I wasn't battling Daniel. I was stepping out of the shadow he built around me, and he was terrified of the light. It was late. Rain tapping against the windows. Kids asleep upstairs. The house quiet. Too quiet. Daniel walked into the living room, face pale, eyes hollow. "I know what you're doing," he whispered. I didn't look up from my book. "I'm doing nothing," I said calmly. And that was the truth. I was simply done. He paced, breathing unevenly. "You're going to ruin me. You'll take everything. You'll destroy my reputation. People listen to you now. The kids." His voice cracked. I closed the book gently and finally looked at him. "I'm not destroying anything, Daniel," I said quietly. "I'm just not protecting your lies anymore." He froze. Those words cut deeper than any evidence I had gathered. Because he knew once a lie is no longer protected, it collapses under its own weight. He sank into the chair and covered his face with both hands. And for the first time since I had known him, he cried. Not because he was sorry, not because he regretted hurting me, but because he realized he no longer controlled the woman he once broke. I didn't destroy him. Life did. Truth did. His own behavior did. Finally exposed, no longer hidden behind my silence. I didn't scream in court. I didn't beg. I didn't defend myself to anyone. I simply showed my truth, calmly, steadily, fearlessly. The kids chose me. The court believed me. His colleagues stepped away. His reputation cracked in places he could never repair. And me? I rebuilt myself from the same pieces he tried to shatter. I moved into a small cottage on the edge of the countryside. Quiet mornings, soft light, a life that felt like breathing again. Sometimes, when neighbors ask how I survived so much, I just smile and say, silence isn't weakness. Silence is power, the kind he never understood. And for the first time, my silence wasn't a prison. It was freedom.